really has 6 assumptions and 8 process elements. 6 assumptions have to do with that adults have a need to know why they should learn something that makes sense to them. Self-directedness is what their mode of operation is that we make the assumption of as far as their learning is concerned, and that increases as time goes along. The experience base that adults gain is accumulated over a period of time and needs to be a resource for other people and as well as their own learning. The need for learning really gets oriented toward the developmental tasks of their social roles in contrast to a predetermined level of maturation that takes place. The motivation for learning is much more internal than external. And the orientation for learning is more of a desire for immediate application. I want to learn something today, this morning, that I can use this afternoon, or today that I can use tomorrow, or very, very soon thereafter. Those are the assumptions. And then you go to the process elements of andragogy. It really has to do with 8 different things. Number 1 has to do with preparation for coming into the program. What is it sort of going to be about? Then there is the setting of the climate, establishing a climate that is conducive to learning. And it includes all of those items that are up on the right-hand side: relaxed, supportive, trusting, enjoyable, and all the other ones: authentic, openness, and then planning needs to be mutually by the learners and the facilitators. And with the diagnosis of needs, not just done by the teachers that are conducting the program, but by mutual connection between the facilitators and the learners. And then the objectives are set that are an outgrowth of whatever the needs are. The designing of the plan for carrying out the learning really needs to be done in accordance with design principles such as a general session, small grouping sessions, prior reading, focusing on reflection and maybe meditation about what there is, and some preparatory activity. Then the learning activities really need to be carried on that the individuals had responsibility for their learning and carry that forward, and they're allowed to do, not only allowed to do that, but encouraged to do that. And then the evaluation comes at the point where we really raise the question, how far have we come? What have we accomplished? What is there still to be accomplished? And you go into a re-diagnosis of whatever the needs might be. That, in essence, is what andragogy is about as far as the cardinal principles of the assumptions and elements that have to do with andragogy. Max, now you can talk about the transformative learning aspect of it.
Thank you, John. Okay, why these two coalesce? It's a synthesis of pedagogy and theory. The pedagogy, of course, being andragogy, and the theory, Mesereau's transformative learning theory. Both are iconoclasts. They're image destroyers because they require a combination of rational, pragmatic, and structure on one side, and imagination and creative affect on the other. And what often happens is that studies and proposed classes in transformative learning in. I think those who attempt andragogy rely too heavily on one or the other. But you need that structure as a form of security so that if you get lost in what's happening with the exercise, you can say, okay, I have these rules and principles that can bring me back on track. And by doing so, it frees that affective side of self that allows the person to express themselves creatively and thereby transcend or transform limitations. Now, in order for this to happen, it requires, as John mentioned, requires an authentic learning environment, requires an instructor who can show who he is in an authentic form. So there's no pretense, there's almost an absence of authority, allowing the group to conduct its own class, basically, with the instructor acting as a guide. And in doing so, you're able to foster collaboration, solidarity, and trust. These are all very abstract concepts. You can't say to a student, okay, we're going to be authentic now, and I want you to be transparent. It doesn't work that way. You have to be able to establish a sense of safety and security so that people can freely express themselves. And if the learning environment is overly authoritarian or too structured or too rigid, it makes it almost impossible for that to happen. And so the other element we want to get to, that we want to reach for the transformative process to really make sense to the individual learner, is the proclivities and eccentricities. Those are the things you think about as you go about your daily business. You don't necessarily share it with everybody, but there are things that are with you that are important enough that they are a part of who you are as an individual and a person. Mesereau calls them cognitive features, but it's those intrinsic parts of the self. And so by contacting them in a public situation, you see you get them out of the head and into reality. And they supply off-balance moments. Mesereau refers to them as disorienting dilemmas. But when you're in a social situation, they are there, and then you have to deal with them. It's just like in life when you are faced with a difficult situation or something maybe you haven't seen before. And how do I deal with it effectively? So then education as art form is a particular interest of mine. I come from an arts background, the theater as a stage director, so it deals with participation all the time and getting out there. The difference between theater, of course, and mine is that, and my application of it, is that it's not an entertainment, it's a learning tool, and that's the primary difference. So, at any rate, intangibles are made real in the here and now. People's proclivities and eccentricities, these parts of the self that are there all the time, have a chance for self-expression with others of a similar mind and of a similar accessibility. So, we're able to participate in exercises that are often humorous and also offer insights into who we are and insights into others. And that helps to build this sense of collaboration and trust. So the intuitive self rejects the status quo. This is the creative element. Resists the status quo because you already know it. It's familiar to you. But it's also a safe place for people to retreat to because of that familiarity. So the advent of original thinking heightens concentration and focus because you're exploring things that you've never had a chance to examine before. And so in order to keep that focus, and in a form of participation, learners tend to function, and my research shows this, on cognitive, affective, and physical levels simultaneously. And so this frees both pragmatic and creative sides of the self. So a more critical stance, and this kind of gives me a chance to get up on my soapbox a little bit, but concerns, and I'm speaking about transformative education, but it's probably also applicable to andragogy as well, is that concerns persist over the quality of the research. Broadening our understanding of the theory and practice is what research should endeavor to do, but for transformative learning, I'll speak to it right now. I think it's safe to say it applies to andragogy as well. Has resulted in a sense of sameness and repetition of studies because too many scholars are stuck on one of these two sides. Either it's too affective and too often left field, or it's so structured and rich that the creative element doesn't have a chance to surface. And Ed Taylor complains, these bullets are from a paper that he delivered at TLC in Athens this year. He's been writing, he reviews transformative learning about every 3 or 4 years. He's complained about the same thing since day one, the sameness of the studies. And when he says diluted and stagnant, he says that anybody that's looking for a context could slap the label transformative learning theory on it. And he feels that steals away from measurable principles. So it's a loss of viability, quality, and significance, which as scholars we always want to maintain. And I think Andragogy has suffered from that as well. So the idea, what John and I have set out to do here is to combine transformative learning theory by providing the vehicle that Andragogy is, and in a way of combining the two to really develop some original research studies as well as personal growth and development for the participants.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to send you all into your groups to generate a question or two or comments, and see where this thing comes when you get your questions and your comments ready. We'll take them one at a time, and either one of us will respond to them.